In February of this year, I found myself staying near London's Hyde Park corner. As it turned out, London was playing host to another visitor at the same time, Star Trek The Adventure. I thought perhaps my friends in San Francisco may be interested to know in what I saw, and even my impressions. Surprisingly, I was allowed to videotape this exhibition. Surprising, because Star Trek as a copyrighted work ought to be protected from any old Tom, Dick or Stephen, for that matter, with a video camera. Well, I ponied up my £15.50p, which is approximately $26. And at 2 p.m. on Thursday, the 27th of February 2003, I began to experience Star Trek The Adventure. First up were bits and pieces from Star Trek Nemesis. That's the latest Star Trek movie. I hadn't actually seen the film, so I really can't be in a position to say whether or not I was supposed to be impressed or not. What I did see was something that looked like the supervillain's go-kart. I hoped he had fun in it. The first area that actually began to make some kind of sense to me was actually from Star Trek Enterprise, Lieutenant Reed's armory. People who have seen this video have actually said to me, wow, it looks so realistic. Well, I guess that's part of the magic of television, because in reality it looks a little cheesier. But then again, you could say that for almost any set if you've actually seen a real one. And speaking of sets, for those of you who know anything about TV production, Lieutenant Reed's console looks rather more like a Grass Valley switcher than anything out of Star Trek, the original show, or The Next Generation. But I guess that's part of the charm of the new show. I resisted the temptation to actually push any of the buttons. After all, I did not want to have to explain to Her Majesty the Queen why there's now a photon torpedo blast hole in the middle of Buckingham Palace.
Facts and figures. Just what does it take to put Star Trek The Adventure together? When you emerge from the many wondrous exhibits and seats you've just seen, and the many incredible experiences you've just been through, you might wish to pause and look back. You might wish to think for a moment about the mammoth feat of engineering that supports it all, and the hundreds of people who have been involved in its design and construction. The housing itself is 30 meters wide, 50 meters in length, and 17 meters in height. The content of the exhibition weighs approximately 250 tons. That includes more than 300 authentic props, costumes, and models.
With an involvement in all the television shows, the features.
There was so much gadgetry to look at, I was wondering whether I should have actually plonked down the £3, that's $5 to you on the other side of the planet, for the self-guided audio commentary. With 2020 hindsight, I'm rather glad I didn't, because it would have been information overload. Unlike the torpedo room that we just left, Quark's bar is festooned by do not touch signs. So much for the Ferengi rules of acquisition.
Hi, I'm Dan Curry, visual effects producer for Star Trek, and today I'd like to show you how we do some of our work for the show. We all owe a debt to the classic Trek, the original series with Captain Kirk. Howard Anderson and Matt Jeffries were pioneers for visual effects in television. They had extremely low budgets, and by comparison to what we have today, very primitive technology, yet they created their illusion of space, and obviously they did such a great job that we're in our 4th permutation of Star Trek and have garnered the interest of audiences around the world. One of the big leaps for us was moving from 1-inch analog to digital video. That gave us the opportunity to duplicate without any image degradation whatsoever, and we were able to then do much more complex shots. Sometimes they would have over 90 different elements for a single shot. On Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and the first few seasons of Voyager, we used exclusive model photography. The advantage of that is that you could see the model, you could get a feel for it, and computer animation was not as sophisticated then as it was now, so we were kind of dragged into it by requirements of the writing. If we got a shot that required 100 ships to be seen in a fleet, there's no way we could physically shoot that with models. But we also had a lot of fun coming up with interesting elements using liquid nitrogen, mylar pom-poms for force fields, and things like that that would allow us to play the role of medieval alchemists. So now that we're into limitless possibilities with computer animation, we have to be very cautious about using it wisely. The computer is a different mindset, but the great advantage of shifting over into computer-generated imagery was that all physical limitations of track length, column height, and east-west track were taken away. All computer models can go anywhere that you want to. They can roll, they can twist, they can move around, they can go any distance because there were no limitations from the physics of a track, or in the case of a motion control miniature model, there would always be a stick or a rod holding the model up, so the model could only rotate so far before we saw that. So we had to design all our shots around those physical limitations of the track length, how up and down the camera could go and how far back and forth it could go. The thing we had to be cautious about is to keep our artistry in the world that the audience would appreciate as a good thing. We try to use the philosophy that if it were a real event taking place in space, how would a great cinematographer shoot it? That way we would avoid gratuitous camera moves or these huge trombone zooms that move all around, and keep it within what audiences and of course we ourselves would perceive as how a real event of this nature would be photographed. So I hope you can get a small idea of what it takes to create the illusions that are the visual effects for Star Trek, and be reminded that what you see that may only be a few seconds on screen could represent hundreds of man-hours of work and the results of a dedicated team of people working toward a common goal.
According to the official program, this food court was supposed to be filled with delectable Ferengi and Klingon delights. As you can see, they're actually full of more British earthly delights, and that could explain why the food court itself is empty.
There's Captain Cook.
Yeah, he's lost his head again. I was by this point a little dazed and confused. I'd seen one too many Ferengi this, one too many Romulan that. However, I was caught a little off guard when the attendant told me I wouldn't be able to come back, that the visit to the engine room would actually be a one-way ticket out of here.
The skeletal construction of the USS Enterprise NCC-1701-D is set alone. The engineering and bridge sections contains more than 3 miles of scaffolding and tubing.
But look around. Just a set. 4 walls, paint, plaster, and plastic. But on television, we add lights, sounds, and a few special effects to create the Enterprise all Star Trek viewers know.
During filming of the Star Trek episode, there would also be cameras, crew, and actors. But even without them, we can use the magic of Hollywood to recreate a typical Star Trek episode.
We're about to send you on your own Star Trek mission. Stand by, bridge. Stand by, all hands. This is Star Trek, the adventure.
This is the bridge. Computer, status report.
All systems operative. Sensors indicate an approaching vessel.
This is the battle deck. Attention all hands. Red alert. Unknown vessel approaching. Tactical officer, speed and direction.
It's headed right for us.
All hands brace for impact. We are under attack. Computer, shield status.
Shields at maximum level.
All hands to battle stations. Damage report.
Inertial dampers all fine. All range sensors inoperable.
Engineering, sir. The warp core is damaged. Containment fields are holding, but we need to evacuate this area.
All decks, this is the commander. All visitors to the bridge.
Ladies and gentlemen, for our evacuation engineering, please make your way to the terminal. This way, please, this way, quickly, quickly.
Everyone, board the turbo lift.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, towards the terminal.
Shields at 52%. Put a containment field around the warp core. Security teams to all decks.
Notify sick bay. We have casualties. Technical crew to engineering.
Computer, report visitor status. Sensors indicate all visitors accounted for.
Stand clear of the doors.
This way to the egress, as they said in P.T. Barnum.
Sick bay, Commander. We're flooded with wounded down here. Power surge. Power surge. Engineering here, Commander. Impulse reactors inoperative. Auxiliary power to the turbo lift. Working on it, sir. Auxiliary power on. Bridge. Turbo lift underway again. Bridge, next block.
Pretty.
Seems calm. Stay alert.
Turn left.
What happened?
It's a junkyard.
What are they firing at?
Aboard ship. Fire racers.
There goes the intrepid.
The Achilles is going straight in. Fire both up. You will be assimilated. Resistance is futile. The counterfeit tractor beam, sir. Prepare to fire phasers and photon torpedoes. They can only have power.
Sir, it's the Exeter.
Impulse engines full reverse. Match target with execute. Fire when ready. Full sprint. Keep firing. Nice shooting, Exeter. Glad you helped me, Bryce. All stations, stand down. Computer, status.
Shields down. Battle status canceled. All systems are normal.
On behalf of the hundreds of men and women who create the Star Trek phenomenon and the cast and crew of Star Trek, may you live long and prosper.
Docking port secured.
Permission granted to disembark.
When disassembled and packed away, Star Trek The Adventure occupies 180, 40 by 8 by 6 foot sea shipping containers, and 30 standard containers. It all runs off its own computer control and its own independent generators. And yet, it only takes 4 people to run it once it's actually built. Now, it really is futuristic technology.
As it turns out, our trip on the interstellar Mare Celeste has taken us to the souvenir stand. Okay, if you want to know my actual feeling about the place, it's entertaining, but on the whole, I'm afraid I would regard it as...
Resume course to our next destination, Mr. Sutter.
Course laid in, sir.
Steady as she goes.